Hey, this is Dr. Mark Technowski talking to you today about imbalances and asymmetries within the body. What we are trying to do in our athletes and our coaches' brains is trying to teach you guys how to identify these imbalances before they become an issue that creates pain and then sends you to a doctor to try to manage that pain. If we can get to it before that, we're going to be a lot more successful. So in our chronic injury cycle, which is here, I'll try to post it on one of our pages so you can download that. The biggest thing that we look for are muscle imbalances. So notice that some of these are in blue, some of these are actually in red. If it's in blue, it's technically subacute. You don't feel much. We can teach you what to feel and what to look for, so that way you can say, hey, something is brewing before it gets to this point where you start to say, hey, it's red, and now when it's red, you start to develop some type of a pain symptom. But again, we'd love to be able to intercept it before it becomes a pain issue because we'd like to reverse it entirely. So another one of the sheets that I'm going to try to post somewhere is your checklists. So this checklist is going to help you identify these muscle imbalances. So let's go through the checklist together. First, we're looking at strength. So does your athlete have a strong side and a weak side? It's common for that to be normal. However, we allow for a very small percentage of drop-off or strength changes from the dominant side to the non-dominant side. Really, maybe about 5% is only that's acceptable. Anything more than that, we have to investigate further. Is your athlete routinely outperformed by his or her teammates? If you notice that somebody in certain skills just doesn't have the ability to do so, but other athletes are far surpassing them, it's a good possibility that there's some kind of a disconnect within that person. And then are there skills in your athlete's sport that they consider too challenging? For cheerleading, let's say it's a backflip. Can some girls not do a backflip? Some girls can, some girls can't, but you know what? It's teachable with everybody's body. Sometimes they just don't have the connection to those muscles that create that particular movement. Next highlighted section is balance and coordination. Does your athlete balance better on one side than the other side? These are asymmetries to look for. Is the athlete's balance limited compared with other athletes in their sport? So if they can stand on one leg for 45 seconds easily and they can stand on the other leg for 20 seconds and you see a pretty big drop off, that's enough for you to say, hey, something's going on. Same thing if person A balances well on both legs for a long time, person B balances so poorly, you can say, hey, just train more, just try balancing more. And that may work, but a lot of times it won't, and that's when we come in. We can pretty much identify why they can't balance and give them the proper training so that way they balance better and they balance better quickly. Last is flexibility, and flexibility is probably the most important. So flexibility limitations with your athlete. I can't tell you how many people can't touch their toes these days. That's a pretty good functional test for somebody. Hey, can you just at least touch your toes? If you can't, we know there's tightness somewhere. So that's a good indication for us to say we need to start investigating where there's tightness, why there's tightness, and start reprogramming how the person is using their body so that way the tightness is eliminated. Does your athlete seem less flexible than their peers? You as a coach or as a trainer can easily see everybody doing their warm-ups and go, wow, that person's really tight. So you guys have the eagle eyes and you should be identifying these things prior to them becoming a pain issue. And then does your athlete always complain of the same tight muscles regardless of how much stretching is performed? This is a big one because stretching is something that we're recommending less and less. When you stretch a muscle, the muscle may temporarily seem like it has more length, but if you stop stretching for a day or 2 days, then the muscle typically goes back to being just as tight as it was. So we don't recommend stretching typically. We want to actually improve the muscle's elasticity by giving it better neurological input, and that's by learning how to fire it, learning how to activate it. So these are some of the things that I want you guys to start checking in yourselves and in your athletes so you can, again, be that eagle eye and say, hey, listen, you know what? This doesn't look right. This looks like it may present a problem, or it absolutely will eventually present a problem if you don't get it addressed. So you can send them to somebody who does the kind of things that we do, and we can identify that. And again, we don't necessarily care what stuff is called, plantar fasciitis, lateral epicondylosis. Like, that stuff doesn't mean much to me. What means much more to me is that, all right, how did that lateral epicondylitis or epicondylosis, how did it form? Was it because that the deltoid doesn't work too well, the external rotator doesn't work too well? Is it possible that the grip flexors are working too hard? Something is going on, and we need to identify how it got there so we can reverse it. Much more important than just knowing what it's called. So that's my tips for today as far as how to identify imbalances.